Okay, so I'm back, and this is demo number 3. So in demo number 1, I showed you how to find your way to the Saptarishis site, locate the request section to get yourself a copy of the Saptarishis astrology research software. And I did not cover how to, download the zip file and install. You're going to figure that out on your own. But then in demo number 1, I showed you how to do a couple of relatively simple things, how to find a Chandra-Mangala yoga that was strong and in kendras at the same time. And I think we had to write 3 or 4 lines of code to do that. But it's pretty simple. And I showed you how to find a Parivartana yoga. That was quite simple. It was only 2 lines. Then in demo number 2, I showed something different where I dictated what kind of ascendant I wanted, a Mars rules ascendant. And then I said I wanted to find horoscopes with lagnesh in association with Saturn. And I could have added on more criteria. It could have been lagnesh with Saturn and Rahu, let's say. It would enable us to do that. And then I should give you a demonstration also of how to find a Purushartha theme. And that is, when you're looking at either Dharma, Artha, Kama, or Moksha lords, moving around within the horoscope, but staying within their triad. So in other words, I was looking for an instance where all 3 Kama lords would remain in Kama-Sthanas. Something I did for research for my last book, Kama Yoga. So now in this last demo, I want to show you something else, which gets slightly more complicated, but not that much more complicated. So let's say I want to find Kesari yogas in the horoscope. So what is a Kesari yoga? That's when you have Moon and Jupiter in mutual kendras. So if you treat Jupiter as a static point, the Moon would be Jupiter in the first, let's say. Then where could the Moon fulfill Kesari yoga? So the Moon could be in the first, the fourth, the seventh, or the 10th, where they would be in mutual kendras. I could also find it if Jupiter was in the second. We could find a Kesari if the Moon was in the second, the fifth, the eighth, or the 11th. If Jupiter was in the third, we could have a Kesari yoga with Moon in the third, the sixth, the ninth, or the 12th. You get the idea. Moon and Jupiter are in mutual kendras. If I plug that into my search feature, though, I'm going to get a whole lot of horoscopes. If all I say is that Moon and Jupiter would be kendra to each other, I could end up with, well, how often does that occur? Moon and Jupiter kendra to each other. If Jupiter's the static point, Moon can fulfill that in 4 out of 12 possible house or sign positions. 4 out of 12, that's 1/3. I got 23,000 data points here. I'd end up with 7,000 horoscopes. I certainly don't want that. So I'm going to get more specific. I'm going to actually ask that my Moon and Jupiter actually literally be in the kendras. And even there, I can end up with a lot of, in fact, let's do this. So let me clear the stuff that I was previously working on, and I'm just going to go to planet, and I'm going to say I want the Moon in a kendra, pure and simple. So that means I want the Moon in the first, or the fourth, or the seventh, or the 10th. Yeah, that looks good there. Let me generate the line and see if it looks right. Planet, Moon in the first, or fourth, or seventh, or 10th. Okay, that's the first part of it. I got to have Jupiter in a similar circumstance. Do the pull down, find Jupiter, and then got to toggle off these houses again because we're working with houses. For this layout, yoga, it doesn't matter what sign they're in. I just need them in kendras. So Jupiter in the 10th, Jupiter in the 7th, Jupiter in the 4th, Jupiter in the 1st. I inspect what I've got down there. It looks good. Let me click the generate button and then really inspect it. Okay, I'm talking about Jupiter in the first house, or the 4th, or the 7th, or the 10th. Okay, I might think that that's going to do it right there. And I could start right now and say, well, let's search on that and see what I get. Let me, and it's useful for me to do this for your benefit. First, we want to check, up here, you'll never need to change this again. First time you use the software, you set sidereal, if that's what you like, if you're a Vedic astrologer, of course, and you typically set Lahiri. Okay, once you do that, you never have to do it again. I recommend mean nodes. Some of you like true nodes, okay? It's not really as good as you think it is, but whatever you select, that's fine, and you'll never have to do it again. And if you want your charts displayed in North or South Indian, you do that, and then you'll never have to do that again. Okay, but you do need to check each time you boot up the software again. You won't have to recheck those settings. They're now embedded, but you will have to check. Don't be searching all data, because we don't want to look at 36,000 data points, a quarter of which are untimed and therefore useless to us for accurate horoscopes. You want the AAA. Make sure you got that. SRS database. Okay, that's good. I'm ready to search. I want to illustrate what can happen. Keep in mind that we've got 23,000 data points here. Start the search and let this thing run. Keep an eye on this rolling number here, and when you get around 2,300, ding, look over across there, and I saw I had 155 accumulated already. That's after going through just 1/10 of the database. It means if I have 155, at that point, I'm going to end up with 1,500 horoscopes to look through. Stop it. I don't want to see that many. So I'm going to stop my search right there. It burps out everything that it's found thus far. And I didn't pay attention to where we were at, but it was way too many and I want to look at. I could scroll down through here and I could see I've got almost 600 already, and I wasn't even halfway through my search. So forget that. I'm not going that. So sometimes you'll do this and you'll realize, wow, my search criteria are too loose. I'm going to end up with far too many horoscopes to visually inspect or looking for names I recognize. Let's tighten it up. So how can we tighten this up? Basically, I've got the setup to say Kesari Yoga because I've got Moon and Jupiter literally in the kendras. Not only kendra to themselves, I have got them literally in the kendras. I'm only looking at Kesari Yogas that are actually in houses 1, 4, 7, and 10. How can I strengthen this? What criteria could I add that is useful to me as an astrologer and useful to me as a researcher now to trim this a little bit so I don't have to look through 1,500 horoscopes? The first thought that occurs to me is, why don't I make Jupiter at least strong? So let's do this. So I got Jupiter already ticked off here. How do I make it strong? I put it in a good sign. Where is Jupiter strong? When it's in its own signs or when it's exalted? Okay, so let me do that. I had to click this. Remember, I was previously on houses, but now I got to go to signs because I want to dictate strength for Jupiter. I could, get strength by going to direction and say, I want it retrograde as well too. But I'm not going to worry about that. I could do that, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep this simple and just look at Jupiter by sign. So I want it in Cancer, where it will be exalted, or I want it in Sagittarius, where it's Swarashi, or I want it in Pisces. Okay, that looks good to me. Jupiter in Cancer or Sagittarius or Pisces will make that Jupiter strong. Let me click generate and see if that line comes out the way I wanted it to. So what does this say now? I've got Moon in the 1st or 4th or 7th or 10th, and Jupiter is in the 1st or 4th or 7th or 10th, and Jupiter is in Cancer or Sagittarius or Pisces. Okay, so I've got a Kesari Yoga with the Moon and Jupiter literally in the kendras, and I've dictated that Jupiter should be strong. Why did I do this? To trim the field of candidates so I wouldn't have to look through so many horoscopes for a relatively robust Kesari Yoga, because this is what matters in yogas, right? That they be, exhibit some degree of strength. So I think I'm happy with this. I'm not going to go on further here and try to dictate that the Moon is strong as well, because now that we're in Kendra territory, that would only happen when Moon is also in Cancer. And it would really maybe restrict my field too much. I'm going to leave this as is, hit the search button, and see what I'm going to get. Away we go. 23,000 data points. Look for 2,300 as it crosses the mark. Right about there, I glance over and I see 52. So I'm going to get about 500 horoscopes in this search. Well, it's still a lot, but now I'm just going to, grit my teeth and bear it and continue on through and to see what I've got. Because now if I got a multitude of, fairly robust Kesari yogas, I've got something to pick and choose. And as you've noticed, as we scroll through this resultant data set of horoscopes that fit the bill of what I've asked for, you'll see a lot of unfamiliar names. Part of it, depends upon you and how familiar are you with, famous artists, athletes, politicians, serial killers, actors, musicians, etc., etc., etc. I got to admit, I'm weak on the sports side, and I don't recognize a lot of the famous footballers and soccer players and golfers, and I know the big names, but I'm sure I miss a lot. But in the arts, I'm pretty good. So here's my list. How many did I get at the end? I got 390. Whoops, what did I see right there at the bottom? Oh, Loretta Young, country and western singer. So, I'll start at the opposite end of the listing this time and just see what we find. So let's remind ourselves, what was I looking for? A Kesari yoga, where the moon and Jupiter are literally in the kendras, and there's some degree of strength, virtue of Jupiter's placement. So let's see what's going on. Here's moon and Jupiter in the 7th house, and they're in Sagittarius, which gives Jupiter strength. Okay, good for Loretta Young. Here's Jean-Claude Van Damme, well-known actor. What's going on here? Okay, so here, moon is in the ascendant, and Jupiter is in the 4th. That is a Kesari yoga. But I set criteria for Jupiter to be strong as well too. And indeed, Jupiter is in Sagittarius, its own sign. So that constitutes a strong Kesari yoga. Very good. Let me see. Jonathan Winters. I think that's somebody I know. I'm not sure, but let me click on the AstroDataBank button and see who comes up. And is this who I thought it was? Jonathan Winters. Yes. American comedian. Okay. So this goes back to those who are old enough to remember watching the Ed Sullivan Show. I'm sorry, but but he is who I thought he was. And that's the cool feature of this AstroDataBank button, the ADB button, where you can go and you get a quick look at that brief bio. Mary Wilson, I also think I recognize that name. I think she was one of the Supremes, along with Diana Ross. Let's see. Well, let's click on her chart and see if the horoscope fulfills. And oh yes, look, Moon and Jupiter together in Cancer. Moon, Swarashi, Jupiter exalted. Beautiful. Okay, let's see if Mary Wilson is who I think she is. This Mary Wilson. American singer and concert performer, best known as a founding member of the Supremes. Damn. Okay, she was who I thought she is who I thought she was. So, I might use her in my case study because, this is the sort of thing I may be looking for. Oh, Vanessa Williams. I recognize that name as well. She was a Miss America, if not more, who later went on to have, sort of a musical career. Did I think she was disqualified because she posed for Playboy? I don't know. But anyway, let's look at the horoscope. Does she indeed have a Kesari yoga, and a strong one? Well, here's the moon in the 7th. Jupiter's in the 10th, and significantly, Jupiter, as I requested, is strong because it's in its own sign, Pisces. So again, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Maybe this fulfills, my candidate search for people I want to talk about or write about in a lecture or in an article. So if I want to save, Vanessa Williams' horoscope, I right-click on this, save the chart, dump it into the file folder that I'm, saving these Kesari yogas, and put in the file name Wilson, Mary, and I'm good to go. And I can come back and inspect that later. And if I need to find more information on her, in my write-up, I can use that AstroDataBank field. Okay, that gives you the idea of how we can find, certain yogas. That may take, a couple lines of criteria first in order to roughly define them, and then maybe to, trim the field so you don't have to look at more than 1,000 horoscopes. We drill down to some of those that are stronger. And what's implied in all this, that there are yogas and there are yogas. Like I said, Chandra-Mangala yoga in demo 2. No, sorry, that was demo 1. I think I talked about it. Chandra-Mangala yogas exist in 1 out of every 6 horoscopes. But there are Chandra-Mangala yogas that are weak, that are strong, and that are mixed condition, and that are entirely ordinary. We want typically to find yogas that are robust in some respects, and we can use this program to help us find them. Okay, so let me go on to one last thing. So I'm done with this, so I got to clear this field because I'm not going to be, whatever's in this box is what we search on. I'm done with this, so I'm going to clear this, so I'll start with a fresh slate. Let's say that I want to search for one of the Pancha MahaPurusha yogas. And so let's say it's Hamsa yoga that I'm interested in. Well, there's Jupiter already set here in the, first, what is a Pancha MahaPurusha yoga? It's when one of the 5 true planets, in other words, we're talking about Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, or Saturn, one of those 5 is found within a kendra, house 1, 4, 7, or 10, and it is also strong by sign, meaning it's either in its own sign or it's exalted. So, let me start afresh here and say, never mind Jupiter. Let's say I want to look at Malavya yoga, which means Venus. Okay, so Venus, how do I find Malavya yoga? First, Venus must be in a kendra. So I'm going to go tick house 1, house 4, house 7, house 10. Yeah? And then that looks right, and I'm going to generate. And then I'm going to read the line I've created. Venus is in house 4 or house 1 or 4 or 7 or 10. Yes, that's good. But is that Malavya yoga? No, that's only half of it. The other half of it is Venus has got to be strong by sign. So I've already got Venus ticked off here, and it's the active, ingredient here. So now I click on this signs button, and I go and select the signs that I need for Venus to be in. Well, Venus has got to be in its own sign or exalted. Own sign, Taurus, or Libra, or exalted in Pisces. That looks good. So let me click that, generate, and see that I get what I want. Venus is in Taurus or Libra or Pisces. Yeah, that's good. So what have I said so far? Remember, this is everything on this line is an or. Venus in 1st or 4th or 7th or 10th, and when we go to a separate line, it's an and Venus in Taurus or Libra or Pisces. Okay, looks good. Let me hit the button here and see what we're going to get. So again, I always keep an eye on this, and when we hit the 2300 mark, let's see where we're at in terms of progress. Right about there, I'm up to 120. Oh, stop it right there. If I've got 120, after going through just 1/10 of the database, I'm going to end up with 1,200 horoscopes. I don't want that many. It's too many. So I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to say, I could persevere, but let's say I don't want to. I don't want to look at that many horoscopes. Let's say I get another idea and I said, I want to find individuals who are really the Brahminical types. What are the Brahminical grahas? They are Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter is, the prime minister. Venus is, a lesser minister. Jupiter is called the prime benefic. Venus is called the lesser benefic. So people whose horoscopes are influenced largely by Jupiter and or Venus are sort of Brahmin types. In the old days, they would be assigned to, learn arts, architecture, literature, music, philosophy, religion, spirituality. Those are all the sort of, Brahminical professions, as opposed to the Kshatriya types, which is Sun and Mars types, which, are, rulership and administration and governance and security, military and police and all the rest of that. So back to the Brahmin type. I want Jupiter and Venus types. So I've already got Venus here. Why don't I go and say, well, I want to find horoscopes that have Malavya yoga. I also want the horoscope to contain Hamsa yoga as well too. So in one and the same horoscope, I want to see Malavya and Hamsa coexist. So for that, I have to go back to my key ingredient here and say, I want to talk about Jupiter. Let's find Jupiter. Here's Jupiter. And so what's the deal again? How is Hamsa yoga formed? Jupiter must be in a kendra, 1, 4, 7, or 10. Let me do that first. Jupiter, oops, see that changed. What happened? I didn't click on that. So there's Jupiter. Jupiter active and greeted. I want it in the 1st, or the 4th, or the 7th, or the 10th. That looks right. Let me hit generate and then read my line. Jupiter in 1st or 4th or 7th or 10th. Yeah, that's good. Let's continue. What creates Hamsa yoga? When Jupiter is in a kendra and it's either in its own sign or exalted. Okay, so then we click on the signs. We still have Jupiter here, key ingredient. Now I want to specify it by sign. So I scroll back to the top here and I find the signs where Jupiter is strong. Cancer, where it's exalted, Sagittarius, which it owns, and Pisces, which it owns. This is a little bit similar to the Kesari example I did earlier. So that looks good. Let me hit the generate button and read this line and make sure that it says what I want it to. Jupiter in Cancer or Sagittarius or Pisces. So that statement is true. Now, if I hit search, it is searching to make all 4 of these lines be true simultaneously. In other words, Venus must be in a kendra, and Venus must be in one of these signs where it's strong, and Jupiter must be in a kendra, and Jupiter must be in a sign of strength too. That's what I intend. That's what my little 4-line program here says. I believe I'm good to go. Start my search button. And remember, we have 23,000 data points here in the AAA category. Keep an eye out. Whoops, I missed it. There were around 15 already accumulated at the 2,300 mark. So that means I'm going to have 10 times as many when this does its full run. So I'm going to have about 150 horoscopes to examine. I find that anything under, between 200 and 300 is quite manageable because, frankly, a lot of them are not recognizable names. You're scrolling through looking for names that you recognize. And again, I can't help you with that, but you've got that AstroDataBank button. Even if there's a name that sounds vaguely familiar, you can check and see, well, yeah, is this person, a spiritual person or a literati or an artist of some kind, or a famous teacher or professor and academic, all of whom are of the Brahminical disposition. Okay, what did I get there? I saw 150 plus. Scroll down the bottom, got 157 names in this. So let's start doing some inspection for who fits the bill. So Michael Bejant, I recognize his name as a British astrologer who wrote a book many years ago along with a couple of other fellows. It was called Mundane Astrology. So let's see, does he have Hamsa and Malavya yoga coexistence in this horoscope? There's Jupiter in its own sign in the 7th, bingo, for Hamsa. There's Venus exalted in the 10th, bingo, for Malavya. The two coexist, okay? So this seems to be working. There's another name I recognize, Olivia Barclay, by coincidence, another British astrologer. Jupiter in the 1st, exalted in Cancer, Venus in the 4th in its own sign in Libra. So Jupiter forms Hamsa, Venus forms Malavya. That's a beautiful one. Yeah, I knew she was there already because I'm using her as a chart example and something else I'm working on. So far, so good. 2 writer astrologers, Brahminical disposition. Pierre Boulez, okay, famous French composer of yesteryear. Let's see, does the chart conform? Jupiter in its own sign in the 4th, Venus exalted in the 7th. Okay, ka-ching, ka-ching. That's a Hamsa plus Malavya. That is valid. Let me scroll on down and let's see if we can find any more examples that ring a bell. Oh, Don Everly, the Everly brothers, a musician. That's one of the Brahminical arts. Let's see what's going on. Jupiter in its own sign in the 7th, Venus exalted in the 10th. Bingo. bingo bingo, I should say, for the two Pancha Mahapurusha Yogas. Michael Crichton, American writer, now deceased, many bestsellers, Jurassic Park among them. So let's have a look here. Jupiter exalted in the first forms Hamsa, Venus Swarashi in the fourth forms Malavya. Yes, indeedy. Okay, Willem de Kooning, famous abstract artist, Dutch born, then, gained fame and whatever, fame and fortune in America, I believe. Let's inspect the horoscope. Jupiter and Venus, both in Pisces in the fourth. Jupiter Swarashi, Venus exalted. Hamsa and Malavya coexisted. Okay, I don't need to continue. Peter Fonda's there too. Acting is also one of the arts. Peter Fonda, what's he got? Jupiter and Venus, both in Pisces in the 10th. Thus far, this has proven itself out very nicely for, people with Hamsa and Malavya being sort of, double dipping Brahminical types, and thus far most all of them, if not all, I've found thus far, and admittedly I've only gone through 30 horoscopes out of 150. Surely I will find evidence of more if this is the kind of article I want to write. So there again we have it. And if I were in doubt about who Pierre Boulez was, I can always click on the ADB button and I go have a look. Takes me right to the AstroDataBank AstroDienst, and lo and behold, French composer and conductor, one of the most distinguished and influential musicians of the 20th century. Okay, my memory did not fail me, but sometimes it happens. I saw a name the other day, Howard Baker, and I thought, oh, is that the guy who was shot instead of Reagan, and he got in the way of Reagan's would-be assassin? And I still don't remember that guy's name. His name was Baker, but it was not Howard. But anyway, so that ADB button is really very useful for you to go and check and say, is this person, who I'm thinking of? You might see this name here, Gautam Chopra, and say, Chopra, that name is famous. And you click on it and say, oh, yeah, okay, it's not Deepak Chopra. It's the son of Deepak Chopra. That's not who I want. Okay, you get the idea. This is a really useful feature. Between the chart display, the ADB button allows you to go and read about that person and left click in this corner and then copy this spreadsheet into your own spreadsheet for manipulation or whatever else down the road. It's truly wonderful. So, okay, I'm going to wrap up there, and that's the end of demo number 3. So I hope you found this useful. I urge you to, if you're at all research-minded, if you write any articles at all, you hope to write a book, or you just want to learn more about, find good chart examples for any sort of thought you have in your head about what combinations might play out. And you could just, browse through Parashara or Paladipaka or Kalamrita or whatever, reading, the classics and what they say about this, that, or the other thing. Not all of these yogas can be found that easily, as I've demonstrated here. You're going to come up against some hurdles. You can't find Kalasarpa, as I found to my chagrin when I was working on my Kalasarpa book. So there are lots of things that you cannot find, and you'll have to do a little bit of thinking. Logically ask yourself, how are certain yogas or combinations formed, and then see if you can write it up to that degree. And you might not get all the way in some instances, but still it's a wonderful head start for any form of research. So I urge you to take advantage of this free software and do what you can with it. Okay, so away you go with that, and enjoy yourself. It's really quite a fun thing. If you have any questions, let's see if I can take you back to the Saptarishis site here. I don't want it to take you all the way back to home. And is that going to take me there? I can't quite seem to get there. Okay, no matter. I was going to say that if you wanted to reach me, you could do so by emailing me, and I wanted to get back to the home page, but for whatever reason, I can't seem to find myself there. Anyway, it's alan.anand@gmail.com. Okay, I'll let you go. Take care.